Hey, Kevin here with Notes on Iowa, and today we're talking about part 2, day 6 of my 2021 walk across Iowa to follow in the footsteps of the 1835 Iowa Dragoons. So on part 2, day 6, I started at Don Williams Recreation Area just to the north of Ogden, kind of in the Boone area, where you can see more about that area over on the video related to part 2, day 5, or the article related to that as well. But on this day, I headed up first through the small town of Dayton, then eventually over to the confluence of the Boone and Des Moines rivers, and then eventually made my way up to Dolliver Memorial State Park and on to just south of Fort Dodge, Iowa. So come with me as we take a look at part 2, day 6 of my 2021 walk across Iowa. So I started the day on gravel roads, just making sure to stay about a section over from the main highway running north out of Ogden, and past a variety of different agricultural sites. I had visited with a local farm family the evening before as they had me out for dinner, and we talked about a lot of different things, including their cattle, which you can see a couple here, and then as well as some different ground conditions related to the drought. I wrote a little bit about that in the photo essay, more stuff. I'm still thinking about some of those conversations, really an interesting part of the journey. But just made my way through this very agricultural landscape on the way up towards Dayton, which is a pretty small town, but I knew that was going to be the first stop for the day. I had a little company on part 2, day 6, at least momentarily during the early stretch. There was this dog that came out of a house, followed me for a while until I got distracted, eventually by chicken confinement, went over, was checking that out, but a couple miles along for the day. Also saw a lot of beautiful wildflowers in the ditches early in the day on part 2, day 6, including Iowa's state flower, the wild rose, which you can actually see right here. And this one I had to have, happened to have some kind of somebody living in it. But I pressed on from there, eventually arriving at Dayton, which Dayton, a relatively small town, under 1,000 people, but still has a rodeo grounds. It looked like they were getting ready for a show that day. Really nice park that was shady, that gave me an opportunity to maybe take a little bit of a break, but pretty long day here. So eventually we just kind of passed on. I didn't spend a ton of time in Dayton, and we were making our way up towards the Boone River confluence. This is important for our Dragoons piece of the 2021 walk across Iowa, because the Dragoons actually went up the Des Moines River to the Boone confluence, and then they angled northeast and headed for around the Winona, Minnesota areas. They're hoping to meet with Chief Wabasha of the Dakota, but they eventually ended up coming back down to Des Moines. So I just pressed on from the confluence, eventually having the opportunity to kind of just push north there. Checked out the Boone Forks Wildlife Management Area, which is a bunch of different parcels kind of spread around the confluence of the two, and you can actually see that here in the video. I put the drone up, took some footage of the farmland around there, and as well as we'll see a video here in a moment that's the actual confluence. So some of you that are following the project closely, you'll notice that I've been posting other things about the Dragoons off the Des Moines River. And so every once in a while I'll post in that parts unknown section when I go visit one of the other places the Dragoons went. Places like the Mason City area. I posted about the Shell Rock River Greenbelt recently, where there's a really nice trail today, and the Dragoons had passed through that area as they made their way northeast back towards the Mississippi before eventually returning to the Des Moines. So from here, I'm actually kind of leaving the Dragoons as they would have been going north. But today, this is also a part of the auto route for the Dragoon Trail put on by the Iowa Department of Transportation. We can see the north-south signs here that show that both parts are going through here. Also in this area, you'll see a lot of alternate route signs. And here we actually see the drone footage at the confluence. And those two signs were right near there. The Auto Trail, the southbound starts at the Frontier Ford Military Museum, which we'll talk about in the next video for part 2, day 7, and then ends actually in Webster City, where I also went to visit on part 2, day 7. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in the video and article to follow. But from the confluence, I pushed on towards Lehi, which is kind of interesting. It used to have one part of the town on one side of the river that was called Slab Town, and now it's just a small community, around 500 people or less, that straddles the Des Moines River just south of Dolliver Memorial State Park. And so heading into Lehi, I didn't really know what to expect. There's some beautiful old homes. There's also on the east side of the river, there is a history museum. It wasn't open when I was going through there, but I thought it was interesting. It was the second time in 3 days, or second time in a couple of days, that I had seen an old railroad depot that was transferred into a historical museum. And I think that's an interesting purpose for those. From there is a few short miles up to Dolliver State Park. Here you can see me going through the south entrance, which is actually on the National Register of Historic Places. The north entrance on there as well. The Civilian Conservation Corps did all sorts of work in the park. It has a great history to it, including a really interesting kind of fake history moment. There was these two boys that had a tablet written in Latin that alluded to Father Hennepin, who was a French explorer, and they buried this in the park, and eventually a girl found it sometime in the early 1900s, and it created this great stir that maybe the entire exploration of Iowa went a little bit differently. Aside from kind of a fake out history like that, there is a lot of natural history within Dolliver Memorial State Park. Here we can see Boneyard Hollow, which is one of my favorite places in the entire state of Iowa. This is what we would call a buffalo jump, used by indigenous peoples in the pre-horse era to kind of take herds and funnel them towards these cliffs, where then they could have a successful hunt by charging the herds over there. Early settlers theory found all sorts of bison bones in this hollow. Today you can actually walk right up it. There is a set of stairs that can take you on a trail overlooking, which is kind of interesting as well. There's a lot of cool lichens in there, and just like a lot of people have written on the rocks. Please don't do that if you visit. A lot of those are older though, in the sandstone that kind of Dolliver really is known for. There's Prairie Creek that runs into Des Moines within the borders of Dolliver Memorial State Park, and that's what's carved out these ravines and canyons. So similar to like what you might see at Ledges State Park, there are all sorts of interesting sandstone exposures and just really, really beautiful kind of setting. There's a large campground there. There's some different opportunities. A lot of people taking advantage of this great Iowa recreation area. Also not very crowded on any of the days I've ever been there, and living not too far from there, I do stop down to Dolliver from time to time, and usually don't run into a lot of traffic no matter when I go, whether it's the summer, fall, sometimes in the spring. There are also interesting trails throughout. One here that we can see leads up to some mounds, and then there's also some markers for like Senator Dolliver, who the park's named for. He's a Republican senator from Iowa that was commemorated, and this became Iowa's third state park during kind of the early 1900s and the 1920s. So on part 2, day 6, I made some really steady progress from just north of Ogden to just south of Fort Dodge, and saw some really interesting sites, including Dolliver Memorial State Park, towns of Lehi and Dayton, as well as the Veger Cemetery. I know I didn't go into the Veger Cemetery a ton in the video today because the previous video for part 2, day 5, focused on Milton Lot. I had a lot to say about that, pun intended. And then tomorrow's video, when we talk about Sidom to Duta at Lizard Creek in modern day Fort Dodge, as well as we get over towards the Spirit Lake region, we're going to talk about the Lot family some more. So if you're looking for that, it'll be coming, it's just not here today. There are a lot of great historical resources that I'm coming across, and you can help me with this. If you know things about the area, if you have family history tied to things, make sure to reach out. People make this project better every day. And as I'm in the more research-intensive parts of this, these videos and photo essays that I'm putting out every day are just my observations. And as I continue to develop the project through archival research, I'm happy to look at anything you might be able to pass along. I appreciate you taking the time to watch the video, and I am grateful you're following along as I completed the 2021 walk across Iowa to follow the 1835 Iowa Dragoons. Thanks.
There's a lot of good history about Iowa. A lot of people don't even know about it.